Hey, welcome to the show. Quick question for you. Have you ever caught yourself yelling at your kid to get off their screen and then you get back to staring at your phone? Yeah, me too. This episode is for every parent who has ever felt like managing your kid's screen time is a full-time freaking job. Or worse, that maybe the screen is taking over your entire family's brain space. My guest today is Emily Cherkin, also known as the Screen Time Consultant, and she's author of The Screen Time Solution, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech-intentional parent. So Emily spent over a decade in the classroom as a middle school teacher, and she saw firsthand what screens are doing to our kids. Then she was in a car accident and had a brain injury, and it gave her a radical perspective shift on screen use. And now she works with families, schools, and policymakers to bring our attention back to where it belongs. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, NPR, twice on the Today Show, the BBC, and so much more. CHUCK NORRIS even quoted her. Today, we talk about why screen time is often a symptom and not the real problem. We get into why parental controls don't actually work. I know, I was bummed about this too. How screens are hijacking our brains and our relationships. And most importantly, what are we going to do about it? So I have a bunch of kind of granola crunchy parent friends who are really have always been super anti-screen. And this is obviously my shit, but talking to them about this has always made me feel like a little judged and maybe also a little judgy because I'm like, screen-free life is not realistic or maybe not desirable. So I didn't have that reaction in this conversation. Emily brings amazing research, so much passion, and so much empathy. I didn't feel shamed at the end of this conversation, and it completely changed my perspective and my actions. So check this out.
Breaking news. Your dream life isn't going to happen because you made a vision board. You're going to need goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. This podcast is about getting clarity on what you want, having the grit to do the actual work, and most importantly, constantly training your brain to be your bitch. Ready to be inspired? Here is your host, best-selling author, Una Duncan.
Emily Cherkin, thank you so much for coming on this call.
So welcome. It's nice to be here.
You know what, Emily, I was just reviewing your website and my questions for you. And I already started getting a little emotional because this is the primary problem in my life right now.
Yes.
How do I think so much about my kids' screen time? You know, they talk about emotional labor for women and emotional labor for parents, really. And I just think, yeah, because 80% of my brain is calculating how much time my kids are spending on screens and trying to manage that. And I'm going to lose my freaking mind.
And you know what's crazy? Maybe this is, I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm actually updating my website. Like I'm doing more than what the website says.
Oh my goodness.
Like the website right now is very focused on the parent side, which is 100%. You're right. Like that's the big problem. It affects everyone. Anyone who has a child is impacted by this. And then there's the second elephant in the room, which is the screens that are being used in school. And so that's like a whole different layer of complexity for families. So yes.
Emily, that was going to be like my 20th question to you was about the screens the schools are giving us. Even when I'm like, okay, we've got this nailed. My kids are off their screens. Oh, just kidding. In order to accomplish anything in their lives, they have to hop back on their screen.
Yep. I know. Yeah. I thought about like doing some cheeky social media post that was like, want to reduce your kids' screen time? Refuse the school computer. Like that'll save you 5 hours right there. So I know the problem is it's very variable. Like it's not fair to say every kid is spending 5 hours a day on their screen for school, but there are some kids who are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Back up.
Take a deep breath.
Yep.
And let's start at the beginning for a second. Okay. If screen time is a symptom, what is laying the foundation for the amount of screen time that we're consuming?
That is a good question. And I think there's, I kind of think of this as a perfect storm of several different things. Like, a lot of people want to blame the whole screen time problem on the pandemic. It's like, oh, it drove us to our screens. We didn't go outside, all this stuff. Well, that actually was already happening way before COVID. And I know that because I've started the activism work I do back in 2018. So well before COVID. And even as a teacher myself for 12 years in the classroom, back in 2012, I was having concerns about the technology being used in school. So like, it wasn't that it was as pernicious as it is today. It's just that that COVID the pandemic sort of like added fuel to the fire and accelerated what was already happening. At the same time, another big difference is our parenting strategies, like the way we approach parenting. A lot of I grew up in the 80s, and it was like, I was very much a free range kid. I mean, my parents worried. It wasn't like, there was the sort of kidnapping, stranger danger stuff, but I wasn't, my freedom to roam was actually so impactful for my sort of independent self-confidence. Freedom to roam today usually means on the internet. And there's a lot of really unsafe stuff on the internet. And actually the real world's far safer than we think it is, which is another problem, that parents are consuming our own sort of 24/7 clickbait headlines that make us think the real world is scarier than it is, when in fact it's actually far safer today in 2025, in spite of what we feel. The numbers are actually lower. And so sort of this confluence of all these different things has happened.
Wait, can I just like summarize that for you? Because I think it's really interesting. So parents are consuming all of this scary stuff about how it's so unsafe out there.
Yep.
So we say, oh, kids, don't go play out on the street, but I can't entertain you 24/7.
Yep.
So here you go, watch Teletubbies, or I'm sure that's a dated reference, but watch, I don't know, Blue's Clues. And so then you're safe. And now the kids are getting hooked into this and they're going out less and less. Is that what you're saying? And this is a self-perpetuating cycle in every way.
Totally. I wrote a book, and I wrote, one of my whole chapters is on this topic. My book is called The Screen Time Solution. But one of the chapters is all about this idea of what I call scary versus dangerous, right? And so this is like, for example, I hear parents say to me all the time, well, I need to give my kid a phone because if they get kidnapped, I want to be able to track them. Well, it's in the US, at least, kidnapping is actually in the top 3 of parental fears in America. So it's like, kidnapping, cyberbullying, and mental health. Like those are sort of the top 3 fears that parents have. But the ultimate irony is, if your fear is kidnapping and your solution is to give a phone to keep your child safe, what do you actually do? You make mental health and cyberbullying way worse, right? And the irony is, and this is Lenore Skenazy's work. She does Let Grow movement. She's amazing and brilliant. She actually writes about this in her work too. But if you really wanted your kid to get kidnapped, this in terms of statistics for a moment, you'd have to wait outside every day for 750,000 years to guarantee that your child would be kidnapped.
Right.
And that's statistically nil. And so then if you give, and I've done this, I made a fake Snapchat account a few years ago just to see what I would get pushed, because the CEO was testifying to Congress that it's safe for 13-year-olds. I pretended I was 15, and within 3 minutes I was being pushed porn. So I would argue that's probably a lot more dangerous than me, maybe 1 in 750,000 years of being kidnapped, right? In terms of what our fear. But the problem is we hear about the kidnapping stories in our own clickbait consumption, right? So we hear about the one time that it happens. I'm not saying it's not traumatic for the families that it happens to, but this is where our sort of emotional brain takes over our rational brain, and how important it is as adults to take a pause and a deep breath and be like, okay, wait a minute. Is this actually a real risk? Or for whom am I giving the phone, right? This is another question I flip back on parents, is is this about your anxiety, or is this actually about protecting your child? Because to me, it seems like it's more often about a parental anxiety and alleviating that rather than actually keeping a child safe. Plus, if a kid gets kidnapped, I'm sorry, do you think the kidnapper is going to let them keep the phone?
Their phone. Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I hate to say that, and it sounds insensitive, but actually, again, because the risk is so low, that's a non-issue. And then you think about, well, what our kids are going to, they're walking home from school alone. That's what I often hear is well, they have to walk home alone. Well, for hundreds of years, kids have walked home alone from school. And if you're like me and you listen to true crime podcasts, you do hear about the one kid that got kidnapped on the way home from school. But again, that's not the statistical, right? That's a different risk. But if your kid's walking home from school looking at a phone, that's literally a physical risk, right? They're not paying attention to traffic or people walking by. They don't know what landmarks are safe. This is all part of living in the real world that we displace when we hand out technology to young children.
Whew. Okay. Can I speak aloud some of my but as I'm listening to you?
I'm very nice, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm thinking about one of the reasons I give my kids phones. who are 12 and 14. The 12-year-old just got one, and it's not going well. But I will say I do appreciate that I can get a hold of him.
Yes.
When I need him.
Yes.
I feel like it's for my own convenience in a way that I don't have to chase him down and figure out where he is so I can go pick him up. So I can say, did you remember your saxophone? Like all the ways that we communicate these days.
Right.
What about that? Are you just like, yes, it's convenient for you?
First of all, no. First of all, I always joke that I need like a little sign that says I'm not judging you anytime I talk to someone, because like I'm a parent too. My kids are 17 and almost 14. Like I'm living in this world as well.
Yes.
And my almost 14-year-old doesn't have a smartphone. But here's the thing where I go back to the word nuance. Mm-hmm. There are tools that you can give your child to reach him that aren't internet connected. There are phones that still exist like they did back in our olden days with, flip phones or there's, something called like the light phone that my daughter is about to get that aren't internet connected. So the issue is if it's actually a communication issue, I understand that, right? Like I do agree that there is some serious advantages. And just for challenge sake, what might also be gained by forcing or inviting our children to learn what it means to communicate clearly with parents so that we don't have to rely on the tool to reach them? What does it mean for our kid to forget their instrument or their lunch and have to deal with those consequences? Like, those aren't traumatic consequences. Those are real world consequences. And if we are, there's this sort of idea of helicopter parenting sort of earlier in it was in the 90s, 2000s. Now we talk about sort of this lawnmower parenting where you go ahead and mow away obstacles ahead of your child.
I hadn't heard that one. Oh,
yeah, or snowplow, maybe up in Canada, that's what you guys would say. But like, I appreciate that because I think it's this, and again, I empathize because I think as parents, we're sort of like, well, you're supposed to do everything. You're supposed to be the Pinterest parent. You're supposed to have a full-time career as a woman. I mean, we can go into all of the messaging for parents, which is problematic. But part of that means your child never suffers. Your child also never runs into adversity. But what we miss from that is the learning opportunity. We actually really need our children to experience some friction and discomfort in real life as they're growing up, because that equips them to be stable adults, right? So again, there are some kids who can have a phone and be okay and not run into bad stuff or at least know how to handle it or know to talk to parents. So I don't want to say this is like every single kid who gets it is going to be, doomed to an eternity of addiction. But I'm just of the mindset that we want to protect brain development as long as possible. And brains are still highly, highly vulnerable in adolescence.
I mean, my dumb brain can't handle it.
Well, that's my point is like if adults can't handle doom scrolling before bed, why would we expect children to be able to manage it? I mean, that's what makes me crazy about schools giving out tech and then being like, children need to learn how to use it responsibly. Their brains aren't fully developed and adults aren't using it responsibly. So why would we put the burden on children to do it before they've even learned the skills? Like they don't even know what skills they need to know. You know what I mean? So that to me, just that argument. They can't remember
their lunch.
Yeah, which is developmentally normal. Like, I mean, I taught middle school for 12 years. Like the name of the game is messy, disorganized, lose my homework. Where's my lunch? I forgot to do this. Can I call my mom because I need my soccer shoes? Like,
I don't have socks. Yeah.
And we don't want to take those experiences away from children. Like, so again, and I would say with your kids or with anybody else listening who has kids in that age range, like do they have the skills in place to navigate the world before you give them the tool that assists them in doing it? Does that make sense? So like, do they know your phone number by heart?
Yes. Yeah.
Good, good.
Yeah, but I don't know theirs, to be honest.
I know. I don't know my son's by heart. And I totally admit that. But, I bet you could tell me 5 phone numbers from your childhood, though.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yes,
right.
For sure.
So again, like, why might we want to know a parent's phone number by heart, right? Like there's some value for our kids to know that their phone dies, they lose it, they're at a place where they have no reception and there's a landline. Yeah. Like that's a safety thing we can teach them. Like
that's true.
Do they know how to navigate their neighborhood without Google Maps? Like, can they get from your house to the coffee shop? Can they walk to their friend's house without and why might we see that as a skill worth learning? That's the part that I really want parents to remember, that you had that as a child and a teen. Like, we're talking about a generation of children growing up in a very different world. Like I often say, it's not children who've changed, it's childhood that's changed. And that because children haven't changed, we have all the more need to protect childhood.
Yeah. Okay. Was there a moment you were a teacher
Yeah.
and you're dealing with all these middle schoolers?
Yes.
Was there a moment that you were like, okay, that's it. I need to
Yeah.
stop teaching and be a full-time screen consultant?
That's a great question. And actually it's a little more, there's actually a more personal component to that reason for not teaching. I love teaching, and I say love because I still feel like I'm a teacher. I'm actually teaching a university class right now too, but like I love working with young people. When I was in the classroom, I will say there were two things that happened. Number one was, it was actually the ed tech piece first. My school started requiring me to put my homework and grades in a portal. And I was told to tell kids to look there. And what I noticed immediately was they stopped coming to talk to me. They stopped coming to ask, why did I get this grade? Or I'm missing this assignment, or how do I make this up? And they all went to the portal. And then as a result of that, their parents started emailing me all the time. So now I'm spending more time behind my computer as a teacher. And this is in 2012, just so we're clear. This is 15 years ago-ish. And I was like, this is not the point of education. I'm being taken away from interacting with my students in the name of like giving them digital access to their grades. Like, first of all, they're also seventh graders. So who cares? Like, those grades don't matter. None of us remembers what grades we got in seventh grade because they don't matter. I mean, I know they do, but like they don't, right? The second thing that happened was in 2014, as I was noticing this happening, and Facebook was the social media, of the day, and all the kids were on social media or on Facebook over the weekends, but on their parents' devices or computers. They didn't have personal phones yet. Most of them would come in, or they would come in on Monday morning, and, it was like, so-and-so had a party and they didn't invite me. And I saw all these pictures, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't not talk about it. So then what happened in 2014 is my family was in a car accident. And what happened was that I got a brain injury. I was hit on the right side of my head. It's why I wear glasses, because it affected my vision. And again, this was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And the very first thing the doctor said was like, you have to stop looking at your phone and your computer to let your brain heal. And I was like, what? It's my eyes. It's my vision. And they were like, no. Your vision is how your brain processes what your eyes see. And I was like, what? I mean, I know that's obvious, but it never occurred to me that your vision's a brain thing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I had to actually just run that sentence over my head a couple of times.
Yes. Right. Like you think about eyeballs and that's what makes me see. No, it's because I got hit on the head that it affected how I processed that information. And so like I was having trouble using my eyes together. I would get headaches. Things would go blurry. I'd see double. It was really awful. It was like, I couldn't read books to my daughter. Like it was heartbreaking. And then I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that in order for my brain to heal, I need to avoid screen time? I was like, then what are we doing giving it to children whose brains aren't fully developed? So it was actually that moment where I was like, oh, I need to talk to parents about this. And I guess there was a third instance, which was then I started talking to my students about the social media piece and Facebook. And I was like, you should be nice online and you shouldn't post things that exclude people. And I was trying to do be a good person. And the kids were like, yeah, but our parents are posting stuff about their friends. Our parents are texting and driving. Our parents are on social media and playing games all the time. And I was like, this isn't a kid problem. This is an adult problem that is impacting children. And I was like, that's why I have to work with parents. That's why I need to talk to adults, because this isn't kids' fault. They're just the targets of this. They're the victims. They're the guinea pigs. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I see it. I can totally see why that would be a full pivot for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make a distinction, Emmy. Like, is all screen time bad? Because this is when I'll tell you something that someone told me once that I've found comforting since when I get nervous about screen time. What I was told is that it's not like the screen. It's not like there's gamma rays coming out of that technology. It's the content on the screen. It's a very different experience if you're watching like David Attenborough talking about ants,
right,
versus watching
TikTok,
like Fortnite or TikTok or something like that.
Right. Mostly I agree with that. There are some harms to vision and brain and eye and physical health with excessive blue light and, two-dimensional screens, and like myopia rates have, quadrupled or whatever in recent years. So there is a physical component. But I do say this all the time. Not all screen time is created equal. And so it is hard when we just say screen time. What do we mean by that? Because FaceTiming with grandma is really different than TikTok videos. And one of the things I said, because especially during the pandemic when people were using like FaceTime and Zoom to keep in touch with family, I would never say, don't do that with your toddler, because to me, the screen was the tool that you use to communicate and maintain an existing relationship. When we use technology to displace the relationship or to avoid the relationship or to avoid the feelings, that's different. And again, if you have two children, you know this is true too. What does one child, with 3 hours of video game times versus the other? It could be completely different experiences. So the other problem is it's not a one size fits all. Like I get asked all the time, well, how much screen time is too much? And I say a little bit's okay and a lot's too much, which is super unhelpful because it depends so much on, like you said, the content, but also the kid. Kids aren't standardized. Like they don't come in a one size fits all. If they did, there wouldn't be any parenting books. It's like,
right. Of course. Yeah.
It's not that simple. And so I guess my point is like, your kid best. So what limits or boundaries they need ideally. And then you have to make the choice as a family rooted in your values. I mean, that's actually really to me the crux of what I call tech intentional parenting. It's like, my TLDR is less is more, later is better, relationships and skills before screens.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to come up with some really clear structures for our kids, and you said every kid is different, how can we, because it's interesting because my husband and I in the past have like Googled how much screen time is appropriate for a 12-year-old and stuff. And there are really rigid guidelines out there. But if we are to be like, oh no, but my 12-year-old is different than others, what are some characteristics? What are some things that we would keep in mind when we're making those rules?
That's a great question. So, I mean, always in alignment with family values, like I love family movie nights. My family and I, we watch shows all the time together with one screen, right? A family movie night isn't mom and dad on their phones while a movie's playing, right? I know, been there, done that, right? Also, I talk a lot about this idea of choices within choices, right? And so I think about the little like math alligator, when it eats the bigger number, like, if you have a choice, like let's say your kid is going to have some screen time, and again, this is where the sort of absolutism doesn't always work. Like kids do get screen time. It's pretty impossible in this day and age to avoid it. Even if they don't personally have an app or a device or a phone, their parents do, or the person on the bus next to them or the airport, right? Like it's everywhere. So a big screen is better than a small screen, right? Let's just go by physical size. Like a shared space is better than a private space. No headphones, better than headphones because you can hear as a parent, I'm trying to think of the other things like non-streaming versus streaming, right? Like downloaded or DVD based content, because then you don't have algorithms built in, right? You don't have, watch this next where you automatically get content playing, right? Long form better than short form, right? There was just some research last week about, the increase in the consumption of short form content, like TikTok reels, those kinds of things. Those are dopamine snacks. They're so bad for your brain, especially your developing brain, because it's what your brain wants. I mean, that's why we do it. That's why it's so hard to put them down. And so I've heard parents say they cannot get their children to watch full length movies anymore because they can't sustain their focus long enough. So it's kind of crazy to even say it, but like practice watching a longer movie. Like if that's where you are, and that's the thing is parents have to start where they are. If I am giving this advice and parents take from this that they've already failed, then they're never going to do something different. So you have to start where you are as a family. And sometimes that means going backward to go forward. I say this in my book a lot, like, maybe that means your kid's playing Minecraft for 4 hours a day and you hate it and you wish it weren't that many hours. So you got to start with where they are, which is playing Minecraft, which is sitting next to them, watching them play, asking them questions. And anyone who's ever had a kid play Minecraft, I know it's so inane. And you're like, I don't. Oh my God. No, I know it's torture. But what you're doing is you're expressing interest in their interests. You're saying, I can see this is important to you. So before you rip it out, before you say this is garbage and I hate it and it's terrible, you're validating that it's important to them. That doesn't mean you don't say later, and we're making changes, but it's acknowledging, I respect that you have an interest. And I'm also seeing this isn't good for your brain and your body, and we need to make a change. So engaging with them first, because again, it's relationships before screens, right? Like that's one of my TLDRs. Like you have got to build the relationship. Nothing will change if you have a toxic, troubled relationship. And that's saying a lot. Like I get it as a parent of teenagers, like, we know what it's like to interact with, teens who can be hot and cold and spicy and sweet. But if we can navigate within that in the context of a trusting relationship, we can make progress. Is it perfect? No. Do I fight with my own kids about screen time? Oh, yes, I do. But I always joke too, like if I were a dentist, they'd floss more, but I'm not. I'm the screen time consultant. So we talk about screen time all the time. So. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Emily, can I tell you about the guilt that's coming up right now? Son, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. My son's always like, Mom, you should play Minecraft with me sometime. And I was like, honey, the only reason I let you play Minecraft is so that I can get my stuff done. Me sitting there watching you watch Minecraft was such a hell no, I can't even tell you.
So it's an invitation. See, that's the other thing is like to think of it as, you don't have to say yes all the time. I don't blame you at all. But it's like, okay, what would happen if you did? You're like, I'll give you 15 minutes, show me what you're into,
Yes.
And I get it. I am not into shaming and blaming parents because we have enough on our plates. We are made to feel bad about so many things as parents. And the tech industry very much wants us to be our fault because it means that we have to change, not them. And so
totally. Yes,
that's not fair. And so it's okay to say like, I do feel like I need to push back. And I can also admit that I don't know all the answers and that really starting with my relationship to my kid, because that's the thing. We're on the same team as our kid. And that's probably the hardest part of parenting, right? Is like, how do we make sure that we stay on the same team, even as they become these sort of emergent young adults, as they differentiate from us, as they seek independence? Like, it's got to be about helping them acquire those skills and that self-confidence within the comfort of like, I shouldn't say comfort, but within the range of our values and our boundaries, right? Like that's part of parenting is the teaching part. And you can say to your son, you know what? I should have tried this with you a while ago. It's okay to go back. Yeah. This is like the repair part, to say, man, I goofed. And here, let me make you feel better. When my son was like 9, my husband was like lying with him in bed and had his phone like, under his bed, like kind of like scrolling, like we've all been there, done that. Yeah. And my son sits up and he goes, Daddy, I can't compete with your iPhone.
Oh God.
And that was like 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that was an invitation to us as a parent to look at things differently.
Do you want to hear my worst one like this? This
yes,
is horrible.
I won't judge
and
you.
You can tell it on other podcasts because it's the thing that makes me, it's one of those things that rings in my ears of like my horrible parenting moment. It was when my son was like 3 or something like that. And he was asking me something. I was just like finishing something on my phone, because, and then he smacked the phone out of my hand and said, Mom, there's nothing in there.
Oh, but see, this is so interesting because, actually, I think that's really beautiful.
He wouldn't say that now. He'd be like, what are you looking at? Show me.
That's right. But it shows you how a young child only sees this as a black piece of glass. Yeah. It doesn't show the depth of what's in there. And so actually my strategy, my favorite thing to tell parents is this idea of living your life out loud. So that means narrating what we do as we do it. So I'm reaching for my phone. I'm looking here because I have a message from grandma about when we're meeting for lunch, and I'm going to open the map and I'm going to see how long it takes us. See? And you can even show your child. You can, depending on their age, of course, the teenager is going to be like, shut up, Mom. But like, especially for a young child who doesn't see that this is more than just
that black
square.
Box. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like my husband made this point several years ago, and he's like, the phone gives permission for someone who's not even in the room to interrupt us. And if you're a child, how confusing and disrespectful that must feel to be like, this little thing can pull my parents' attention away from me, and I'm physically here with them. And so we have to explain it to them. And it's okay. Again, people are like, but I'm navigating carpools and I'm trying to, that's fine. Live your life out loud. Say, I see that you're getting my attention. I see you need me to listen. I'm finishing this text, then I'm putting my phone down and I'm giving you my attention. When we try to divide, they know we're not listening and we feel guilty. So again, that intentional focus of like, I'm shifting from this to this means something. That's great parent modeling. It's a great way of modeling how we want to use technology, not let technology use us. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my favorite
tips. That's a good one. Yeah. Earlier you said that you do sort of approve. I know you're not here to approve or disapprove, but you said, when we're using screens to have relationships, then that's a good intentional use of screens. And I think, do you want to correct me on that?
I want to clarify.
Yes,
to
please.
Maintain existing relationships.
Okay.
So ones that have been formed in the real world first.
I have an online fitness group. Most of us have never met in person, and we
Okay,
are
fair.
genuinely
If you're an
friends.
adult,
Okay.
So let's say for children, if it's maintaining, so like playing a video game and chatting like over, Discord has massive problems, but like some sort of a gaming platform. My son does this. He's 17, plays video games, but he's chatting with his friends live, but they're friends he knows in the real world, right? So that to me is a little bit different than like my 12-year-old's going to make a friend on Instagram and it's a friend and we don't actually know that friend. Versus like you have and I've met a lot of people through social media that are become, colleagues and allies.
Real friends.
Yeah. So I guess I was just clarifying. It depends on the age of the person. How about that? Or the developmental stage.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because my son would say, both of them, my older son does that where he plays video games with his friends from school. And my younger son is on, I think it's a Snapchat thing, but it's like, it is the best party in town. That particular Snapchat thread of his class is where all of the social interaction is having. So every time, and I want to ask you about parental controls on screens because this is where we're at.
Yes.
But every time we're like, hey, you've got 5 minutes or whatever, they're like, Mom, the whole world is doing this thing. It would be like pulling them out of a party when the party's at the peak. And I feel so cruel. And sometimes he'll even share and be like, no, Mom, listen, this person just said this. And oh my gosh, this person had a crush on this person. I'm like, oh, that is hard to leave. I get it.
Right. Well, it's the FOMO, right? And this is such a problem or challenge, I should say, especially for parents of teenagers, because whether we like it or not, social media is the primary way that teenagers are communicating, whether it's good, bad, safe, unsafe, like it is a reality. We have to find a way to both protect and teach, because this is the other thing is like, I struggle with the whole like ban social media for children under 16. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I don't think children should be on it, but I don't know how you enforce that ban. And it's not like something magical happens at 16. Right? That like suddenly their brains are going to be mature enough to handle it. They're not. This is what I lose sleep over. I mean, to be completely honest, like as a parent, my son, and this is the other thing too. You can tell your child, your 16-year-old, you're not allowed to have social media. It doesn't mean they don't. They could have Finstas. They could have access through a friend's phone.
What is that word you just said?
A Finsta is a fake Instagram account.
What?
Yeah. So you can like make a fake one that you tell your parents you have, and then you have, or you vice versa. You have like a real one and a fake one.
Right. Of course. Okay.
You could also go through a browser. So even if parental controls block the ability to download the app, people can go through the browser. Kids find, they download VPN so they can find the workaround. They like, log into a different networks versus your home Wi-Fi. YouTube is social media, so when parents tell me, oh, my kid doesn't have social media, I'm like, well, do they watch YouTube? Yeah, they have social media. It's exact same, the way that you interact, the way you can comment, the way that you can have followers. But somehow we exempt YouTube from it when in fact it's one of the biggest, most problematic platforms, I would argue, especially because it's in schools as well. Right. And it's addictive. It relies on algorithms. It wants you to stay on. And again, this is, at the end of the day, this all comes down to like really a business model, right? Like the way that these companies, ed tech and big tech, make money is through time on device. So the longer you're on, the more ads I see, the more money they get. That's like the very, very bare bones of the business model. And to me, that is not child friendly. It exploits neural pathways that are still developing. It manipulates a child's ability to pay attention or understand their own emotions. It makes them feel guilty. The whole like Duolingo, like Duo misses you, please come back, right? Like that sort of like persuasive language that keeps them sucked in is counter to what is healthy for children. And children are using these products. So it's going to take all kinds of change, right? Like I think regulatory change, legislative change, business model change, parenting change, cultural change. But in the meantime, we have to understand as parents the risks of using these platforms. And, sometimes we think about like just in the context of, oh, it's addictive, right? Like I don't want my kid on Snapchat that long. I actually think one of the most worrisome things about Snapchat is the ability to buy drugs. It's seconds from, opening an app. Yeah. So actually I was just speaking, you should know about Laura Marquez Garrett of the Social Media Victims Law Center. She's brilliant. She's seen the absolute worst of the worst of the worst. And they basically represent families whose children have died because of social media challenges or drugs that were bought online that were, they thought it was one thing and it was fentanyl, suicide. Horrible, right? So she has seen the extreme. She came to talk to my university class last week and she gave this example of like, your phone, if you have Snapchat and pick up your phone and I look through your Snapchat, I am going to get an entirely different algorithm than your 15-year-old. And that's intentional. And the types of content that our teenagers are getting is much more provocative, pro-drug use, pro-eating disorder, self-injury, porn.
Manosphere stuff, weird
misogynist.
misogynist.
Yes, manosphere stuff, violence. Like she said that she'll go into a classroom of fifth graders and ask how many of you have seen a beheading video.
No.
20% will raise their hand.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And again, I don't say this because I feel like I don't like fear mongering. I also think it's extremely important that parents understand how different things are just in the last 2 or 3 years. Like, right. I would be very comfortable with giving my daughter Instagram of 2011.
Right.
If you go back and you think about what Instagram or even Google or any like so much of our world now is algorithmically driven. And that is where so much of these problems come in. So like back to Snapchat, right? Like there's ways to buy drugs on Snapchat. I would say that number one conversation having with teenagers using Snapchat is don't ever buy something online, like a drug. I mean, again, we would hope they know that, but you have to say it and you can't say it too much. And don't ever take a pill from someone who's bought it. I mean, unless it's your doctor, really, is what we should be teaching them. But we have to remember the problem is that a teenager's brain is underdeveloped. Like this prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed till kids are in their 20s or even 30 years old. So we're talking, we have another 10 years at least with our teenagers, probably more like 15 for their brains to fully develop, which means that they can say to you, it's wrong to buy drugs. It's wrong to do drugs. It's bad for my body. And then they do it because the teenage brain acts and then thinks, right? And that's impulse control. Again, we have to remember that children's brains aren't adult brains. And so their ability to make decisions is very different than an adult ability. And then you layer in the peer pressure, right? Everyone else is doing it. If I don't, I'm left out. So, I mean, we're between a rock and a hard place here. Like I really do empathize. And what I would love is to get all of these teenagers off of Snap and Instagram, like today. But I also know that's not happening and, it's not going to happen overnight. And so to me, just to go back to like, not wanting you to feel like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Is it has to be an everyday conversation and not even in the context of let's sit and chat, but like walk by and be like, don't forget Snapchat drugs are dangerous or like do not, the sextortion piece too, like I've talked to another podcaster who said her teenage son was sent a photo of a young college looking girl and sort of provocative. And she was like, why don't you send me a pic? And then they did. And then immediately what happens is the fisher person, doing the fishing says, screenshots your contacts and then says, if you don't send me money, I'm going to send this this private picture to everybody in your network. Yep. And if you're 17, how terrifying and shame-inducing. Yep. Another thing that I learned was that one of the problems with, this is really where things get blurred, is when schools use social media to promote activities like sports teams or arts department or theater. Like there's like the, high school theater Instagram page or the, lacrosse team page. Apparently, high school male athletes are the most often targeted on Instagram by sextortion scams because so many of them rely on their social media to promote their sport, like especially if they want to go into athletics, right? Right. And so then the way they find these kids is they go to the school website and look at whether their Instagram pages are for their team. And then they can then they're immediately connected to all these high school athletes. Yeah. So again, like these are things that we don't really think about as parents in the sort of risk factor part. I would argue that those are like the really scary things, but they happen fast and we have to talk to our kids about it. And I hate it because it is that like sort of loss of innocence too. The fact that I have to talk to my daughter about like what does it mean that there's a person who could come into the school and shoot because they had a lockdown drill, or it wasn't a drill, they had a shelter in place because of a threat. It was a threat. There was no weapon. She was traumatized.
Of course.
And I had to, and she's like, I don't understand. I was like, so now I have to tell my child, right? Like, this is the world we live in. And the reality is, if we're having internet connectivity in the same way, we have to have these uncomfortable conversations all the time.
Okay. So the conversations, and what else can we do? I mean, let's touch on parental controls and let's go there.
Yeah. I'm afraid I have a very unsatisfying answer for this, which is I don't recommend parental controls only because here's why.
They don't work?
Well, several reasons. They don't work. If they worked, I wouldn't get asked that question all the time. The other problem is it uses tech to solve a problem that tech created. The number of parents who tell me I have spent hours trying to set these up. I pay this monthly fee. It doesn't monitor in-app content. And that's not the controls company's fault. Instagram doesn't allow that. So it doesn't matter what company you're using. Instagram doesn't allow you to monitor in-app content. So it might tell you like your kid got Instagram, but won't say like what's happening within it. So that's a problem. That being said, if a family has a set of parental controls that they use and they like, I don't mean you should go and throw it all out, right? Like I think there's probably some advantages maybe for younger kids about like time limits, right? Using that sort of a thing, but only if it's in service to the rest of the work you're already doing as a parent, only if it's a support tool. Because too often I hear from families that are like, well, if I just download this thing, my kid will be fine. Nope. That's not how it works. It's like you can't just monitor them and expect there will be no problems. In fact, that actually makes them more at risk, I would argue. You have
because
to
they get
also,
sneaky, or
because yes, they will definitely want to find the workarounds, and because you're not exempt from the teaching. You have to teach them about it. They need to understand why you would want to put a parental control on in the first place, right? So again, I realize that this is it goes back to relationships to me, right? And I'm not saying we should 100% trust our teenagers, because again, from a brain development standpoint, they just can't do all these things. But it does mean that when they mess up, they know they can come to us and not get in trouble. Or when they screw up, they know that the first thing to do is to tell a trusted adult so that they don't do something self-harming or scary, right? Like that's the part, if this is how our kids are engaging with the world, the digital world, that we have to be available to them. And, it's nothing is foolproof, right? Life is not without risk, but there are some risks I think that are far more dangerous for young people to change. Like I want the risk to be that they go out and ask someone they have a crush on for a date, right? That's a risk we want them to take. Yeah. I don't want them to risk, sending a dick pic to somebody because they think it's a hot co-ed and it really isn't, or that when they do that, because the rate of this happening is higher than we would want to think. When they do that, we talk to them. They know they can say, I made a huge mistake. And, this is the kind of thing where I jokingly call this drive-by parenting, where it's like, you just kind of walk by and you're like, don't forget, there's dick pics on Instagram, or like, don't forget, never take a pill from someone, that you don't know, or anybody that isn't your doctor. Like just these little like one-offs. And, with teenagers, they're going to roll their eyes, and they should. That's normal, but it means they're listening. We have to hope that they snark at us and they push back and fight us. And if I may use a rude gesture, I don't know if you have video for your podcast, but this is what it's like parenting teenagers. Is I have my middle finger and a gesture to come to me, right? Because that's what it is, like this sort of paradox of being a young person. And what we have to do is ignore that middle finger and know that that's just being a teenager and that's not a new thing, and pay attention to that bid for connection, right? So like sitting with your son and playing Minecraft, right? Like maybe while you're sitting there watching him, the conversation is, hey, have you ever been asked to send an inappropriate picture on Snapchat?
Sure. Right.
Just ask.
Yes.
Or do you know anyone that has? What would you do if? Or what would you do when? I mean, I'm afraid to say it's not an if, it's a when. And so, again, these companies have to do better. And They're not. And so it does fall on us unfairly to be as much of a protector as we can.
But I guess I'm trying to figure out how I could be more of a protector because, you're saying, well, you can try the parental controls. They don't really work. I can do the drive-by parenting and be like, just so you know, but I feel like I'm kind of relying on like loving mom vibes versus the most stimulating, amazing thing in the world.
You will never compete. Yeah, that's the horrible part of this is like I always say to the parents, it's not you versus your child. It's you versus a hijacked neural pathway. The dopamine is going to win every time. And so then you go back to sort of time, right? And you go back to balance and what are the other, and not that we can really, I don't think there is such a thing as healthy social media use for a young brain. I just don't think that, I think that's an oxymoron. And that doesn't mean kids aren't using it, right? And so then it goes back to what else are they doing? So if you imagine, it's like, how are they filling their hour of the day or hours in the day, right? Like we know that on average, 8 to 18-year-olds, and I don't know if it's North America, but at least in the US, they're spending 7.5 hours a day on screens.
Yeah.
That's on average, and that's outside of school. So that's a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So then to me, that's about the displacement. What's not happening? Are they not being outside? Ironically, one of the antidotes or preventative, approaches to myopia, permanent nearsightedness is time outside. So you can prevent or at least reduce your risk of it by being outside. Are kids being outside more than they used to? Heck no, not at all. Way less. So we can try and prioritize those experiences. We can try and make sure that there's family opportunities. We can try to do the modeling as parents about how we use the tech, right? Like, I always feel guilty if I'm in my bed and my phone is in my hand and my kid comes in. Try really hard to think about having a book in my hand. So when they come in, they see that I'm reading. And we don't keep our phones in our room at night. Mm-hmm. This is a low-hanging fruit. This is a really easy thing for parents to do before we ask our kids to do it. Mm-hmm. Kids' phones should never be in their room at night. That's when bad things happen. So I'm not saying go home right now tonight and change that. I'm saying go home and change it for you first. And say, I notice when my phone's in my room tonight, at night, I get distracted. It's the first thing I look at in the morning and the last thing I look at before bed. It disrupts my sleep. There's plenty of research to back that up. It's also like, doom scrolling before bed messes with your head is what I like to say. So we start by doing it ourselves. And then we say, hey, you know what? This is in alignment with our family's values. And I realize that sleep is one of the best things we can do as a parent to protect your health, your mental health and your physical health. So time for the phones to live in the kitchen at night.
Yeah. And we have a big charging station in a closet. Yeah.
Exactly. And having that conversation with your kids about what time feels right. And that they're going to say things like, well, I need it for homework, which is terrible because that's the reality because school, so much computer stuff for school now too. But, or they're FaceTiming with friends to do their math. I used to call my friends on the phone and do math. Like that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I would say those should be happening in public spaces, right? Like those, out in the dining room table kind of thing, like where mom and dad or, nanny or big sister can overhear kind of what's happening. Like, again, it's bad things happen in dark, quiet, closed door spaces.
It's true. But I guess I kind of think of me as a teenager with my my phone with the big long cord that I'd be wrapping around my finger while I talked to my friends for hours in the evening. And it was private. And I wouldn't want to do that at the kitchen table.
Great point. Let's go back to that. That isn't dangerous for children at all. That's wonderful. Children are entitled to their private thoughts. Nothing on the internet is private. So if you're truly talking a landline, they could have that phone in their room all night. You're talking about an engineered product that is designed to keep them on longer at hijacking their own neural vulnerabilities for profit, right? That's a very different experience. So I would love to bring back landlines. I think that'd be fantastic if we could get kids, even a party line even. The other thing is when we're on a phone, so even if we actually are talking, we're often multitasking. We're playing a game or we're scrolling through our social media feeds. Yep. So, I think there's something to think about. Like, what is that experience like even for us as adults? Like, what would it be like for us to actually put our phone down when we're talking on the phone?
Well, this is the thing. This is another, thing that people say. You do have to prepare kids for the world that they are growing into. So, they are copying the adults that they see with their technology use.
Very true.
And that's what the schools are preparing them for. What, in trying to detach them from screens, are we detaching them from the real world that exists?
No, I would argue I mean, that's a really good point. And you're right that but the problem is it's a logical fallacy, because the skills kids need to be prepared for the future aren't technological ones. I always joke, how often do you use Oregon Trail skills from your technology in elementary school? In your day-to-day life, right? Like, the problem is, or the truth is, that technology changes so fast. Look at AI and how quickly we've gone from no AI in schools to now every child has ChatGPT on their computer at school. Like, that's what's happening. And so then you go, whoa, like, that's not about, we're not talking 10 years in the future, because next 10 years is going to look completely different. The skills, and this is so fascinating to me, because if you go into any tech company, walk around their space, and especially like you hear about they provide yummy food and they have all these lounge spaces and there's scooters and like, it's a fun place. There are whiteboards everywhere. They're not screens. I mean, yeah, they have their computers, but like, they're encouraged to use pen and paper or glass, right? Like, to write ideas and to share and to brainstorm, right? The skills of the future, even in technology fields, are going to be things like communication, collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking. And what terrifies me is that today's college kids, and I've written about this already, but I have had 2 experiences in the last few months where I've been on a flight and the person next to me was a young college student, watched them do their homework with ChatGPT, watched them, sat right next to them. I don't blame them at all. You literally gave them a homework machine. Why would their underdeveloped brain say, gosh, this could do it for me, or I could struggle for an hour and do it myself? I'm going to let the machine do it for me so I can go watch my show, right? Like, duh. Twice that's happened. What scares me is that today's college students, let's say they're 20, they grew up in an analog childhood.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah.
So what's going to happen with today's children who are growing up with, we have 3-year-olds on TikTok. We have kindergartners with iPads for school all day long, watching YouTube. And we are interfering at a much younger developmental stage with brain development stuff that is going to have ripple effects that are devastating. That's my fear. And actually, the business world should take note of this. This is future employability we're talking about. This is future, how are you going to have a team that's going to think critically about a problem-solving issue, even if it's a technological one, if these kids lack the ability to think? And I'll give you an anecdote that is why I lose sleep over this. I was speaking to some high school students a couple months ago, 15-year-olds. They were like, we are so worried about the little kids, the 5-year-olds. These are children worrying about children. And they're like, we are so worried. We will never give our kids phones or iPads or tech. Because one of them taught a drama club for elementary school age kids. And she said she would have these kids in her group and she would say to them, okay, let's pretend we're flying. And the little kids would go, how? I don't know how. Do you know how much we have to engineer a brain to get rid of the ability to imagine? Like, to me, that is terrifying, right? So I know I said I'm not fear-mongering, and we just went to a very dark place.
Yes, we did.
But believe it or not, I'm an optimist.
Okay, well, that's what I want to end with. Emily,
Yes.
will you tell us, do you have an anecdote about, I don't know, a 16, 17-year-old who was super addicted to screens and then they emerged out of it, or tell us another one.
Yes. So, well, I can definitely say we've got to give Gen Z some love and encouragement, because they're seeing this. They've been raised with this and they're calling BS on it. A lot of them are. And so that gives me hope. I work with college age students right now, and they were shocked when I told them about kindergartners getting iPads. Shocked. And so to me, that gives me so much hope, because they're the future decision makers. They're the ones who are going to be like, what the hell are you doing? This isn't learning. This isn't teaching. But I'm going to give you a personal anecdote that gives, and maybe it's like helping me reassure my own, anxieties.
Perfect. I'll take it.
So my daughter is in 7th grade, and I refused the school laptop this year. I decided she's not having it. She came home every day with headaches last year. Guess what? Headaches are totally gone this year because she's not on the computer all day. But we actually were interviewed by a reporter a couple of weeks ago. It hasn't aired yet. If it does, I'll send it to you. But the reporter was trying to understand, like, well, how is it being like the only kid out of 1,000 who doesn't have a laptop for school? Like, do you feel left out? Do you feel like you're missing out? Do you feel like you're behind? And my daughter goes, actually, I feel like I'm ahead. I feel like this is better. And of course, my mom brain is like, yes, victory. But I actually think going back to that middle finger, like, I need you. Our kids need us to say no. Our kids, they aren't going to ask for it. They're not going to tell you, Mom, it'd be really great if you set limits on my phone. But they need it. And I think when you give them the opportunity to go without it and show what can be gained by having that break, whether it's the phone, the iPad, again, delaying social media, saying no to the school laptop, like, I do believe that within a few weeks, it's not going to be overnight, there will be a appreciable change in behavior and attitude. I mean, I've heard this firsthand from my own clients, but also your experience as a family and the recognition that real life is actually far more meaningful and fulfilling than our digital, dopamine snacks.
Yeah. Yeah. And they get it.
Yeah.
They can feel it.
Yeah. And it's okay that our kids don't like what we say. They're not going to agree with us on everything. And we can acknowledge that. We can say, yeah, I know you don't like this. I know you feel like this is unfair. And we're going to try it. We're going to see what happens. We're going to experiment a little bit because I care about you.
Emily, I know so many people listening are going to want to know how they can do these experiments, want some help from you in your book. Can you tell everybody where they can learn more from you?
Thank you so much. Well, yes. So my book came out last year. It's a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech-intentional parent. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. And that is a really great guide for families. If you're interested in more in depth, I do one-on-one parent coaching. And I have had some really great success stories with families of, with kids with iPad addiction. And I should say, I always have a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. So I make sure that that's very clear. I'm much more the consultant coaching, helping them through it. And if you're interested in more on the educational technology side, the stuff in school, I'm building out, I said we're revamping our whole website. I have a membership community that's going to be specifically for parents and schools who are concerned about the tech and want to find tech intentional policies and approaches that keep kids safe, that lean into child development, that are about kids and teachers and learning and not about, a company's bottom line and data mining. And so there's a wait list on my website right now. I don't know when this is going to air. It might actually be live by the time you air this. So
I'll leave all the links.
All the links there. Yeah. And then I send weekly essays, weekly or bi-monthly essays to my membership or to my mailing list. And those are often much more sort of in the current moment, like things that are going on either as a parent myself or activism I've been doing. And if you want to get more fired up and feisty and file a lawsuit, I have friends who can help do that too. So,
wow. Yes. Wow. Amazing.
I did file one. I am in the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit right now against one of the most powerful ed tech companies. So
really?
Yeah, I didn't even mention
should not
that.
Be in schools?
It's Power School, which is they own Schoology, so it's a very good chance your kids use one of their products. And it's actually about data mining and privacy. There's a lot of concerns. We didn't even go into that because we think about, is it good for learning? I mean, I would argue no, but so there are a lot of lawsuits coming, and the good news is a judge has agreed with us that this is an egregious breach of social norms, what these companies are doing in violating student privacy. So,
oh my gosh. Well, geez, Emily, I feel like we could have 3 more podcasts just even for my own mama self.
Yes.
But good luck with that. And I'm about to go do all the pickup runs right now. But before I go, I am downloading your book to listen to in the car.
Thank you.
I really am.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And
thank you so much.
Look forward to learning more. Take care. Bye.
Well, dude, I'm telling you, this is one of those conversations that had a major impact on me. After I recorded this interview, I did immediately go and download Emily's book. It's called The Screen Time Solution, and I gobbled it up in 2 days. It honestly felt like someone turned the lights on in some skanky bar, and I thought everyone was hot and having a good time, but just kidding, we're all drunk and gross and we should go home. And what I mean by that is I started noticing how much my family life is impacted by screens and how often I pick up my phone to, like check my bank balance or something. And then all of a sudden I've watched 20 fart prank videos and I didn't even have a memory where I chose to make that happen. And it reminded me how I've had some clients describe binging food in a fog state. They say it's just like they wake up halfway through a jar of peanut butter. Basically, this is compulsive, unconscious behavior that is not serving us. Okay, so here are a few small, teeny, tiny actions that I have started taking. 1, I talk to my family and my kids about our use of screen time and the effects that I'm noticing on myself and in them, and how I'd love to be more intentional with our tech use. 2, what Emily said about living out loud, saying things like, hey, I'm just going to pick up my phone to check the soccer schedule, and so they know what I'm doing. 3, encouraging less headphone and more shared music and media experiences. 4, no more scrolling while watching a movie, one screen at a time. 5, setting a hard phone curfew at night. And 6, not touching my phone in the car at all. Like no quick message checks at red lights. Now, I know you might be listening to this and be like, wow, you're a fucking hero. You might be way ahead of me with your intentional screen use. And if so, I would love to hear what's working for you. In the show notes, you'll find a link to SpeakPipe. Leave me a quick message. And you don't have to create an account or anything. Just like hit record and send me a message. I would love to hear what you think. And if you know of anyone who is struggling with screen time with their family, definitely send them this episode. Okay, until next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.